I now invite Margot Cameron to come forward to light the chalice and lead us in our affirmation of covenant, which is printed in your services.
I light the chalice this morning with these words. The chalice became the Unitarian Universalist symbol of hope during a time of tyranny, a sign of promise that the oppressed would neither be forgotten nor ignored. For all people who have explicitly or implicitly been told they are anything less than whole, anything less than beloved, anything less than free, we draw the circle wide. As I light this chalice this morning, may we remember to be a light to the world, a beacon to the promise that we will not rest until all are free, and all means all. Please join in our affirmation of covenant, saying,
Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other.
I remember well hearing then-President George W. Bush respond to the challenge of terrorism by declaring that hate cannot overcome hate. Hate can only be overcome by freedom. President Bush, who I'm pretty sure went to Sunday school, should have learned there that hate is overcome not by freedom, but by love. That's the first error in his statement. It substitutes freedom for love, decentering our faith's central value. And his second error is like it, in context, the immediate aftermath of the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. He made freedom a euphemism for power. Freedom does not overcome. Power does. In a mode typical of free market rhetoric, he obscured the role of power in exercising freedom. In the title of his poem, Julian Jamaica Soto draws a distinction between liberation and freedom. That distinction is all about the power to exercise freedom. To paraphrase the poem in one sentence, liberation is about being your whole self publicly and authentically, and freedom is about your responsibility to honor and defend others being their whole selves publicly and authentically. That's why he says being free is a promise. If it were a license, it would be merely power. But there's more to it. This morning we sang, we are working to be free of hate and greed and jealousy. Start with love, that is the seed of peace and freedom. Love is at the center of Unitarian Universalist values, as it is in most faith traditions. As Rebecca Parker has written, human love comes from a growing wisdom about life itself. If one wants to love, it is life that one must seek to fully know. And no one of us knows life by ourselves. It is like those famous three blind men describing an elephant to each other. We know a little of life from our own experience and learn much more about it from others' accounts. In our public discourse, we've lost track of this central truth. Those on the political right lost track of it in the way that President Bush did. That's why that loudly defiant fringe group in Congress calls themselves the Freedom Caucus. Properly, they should be called the Power Caucus, that being their goal. Those on the political left diverged by another road. For example, upon a day, Unitarians described our tradition as dedicated to freedom, reason, and tolerance. That formula was how the historian Earl Morse Wilbur described it in his 2-volume History of Unitarianism back in the 1940s. It resonated because in the years after World War II, those values made meaning of the war and looked like a path forward. To later generations, they sounded cold, not warm like love. Tolerance to some sounded downright hostile. Would you rather hear "I love you" or "I tolerate you"? There was active resistance to the word. Some drew upon the Unitarian Universalist principles and suggested affirm as a replacement. They spoke of moving past tolerance to affirmation. In these times, I do not think I am alone in feeling that there are some folks from whom I would like to hear that they would tolerate me. In his book, Reverence, Paul Woodruff cites Aristotle's formula for defining a virtue as a balance of feelings, giving the example of courage. He writes that courage is a well-developed capacity for feeling confidence and fear in the right places, at the right times, and in the right degrees of intensity. That is, courage lies somewhere between fearlessness, which often looks like courage, and timidity, which no one would mistake for courage. Tolerance, it seems to me, is a well-developed capacity for feeling empathy and disgust in the right places, at the right times, and in the right degrees of intensity. The people we merely tolerate are those for whom we feel a general empathy as neighbors and also find about them something strongly objectionable. As a virtue, then, tolerance is simply to be a self-regulating, mature person. Public discourse and the exercises of law, for example, are not places and times where we should allow the intensity of our objections to certain others to overcome our neighborly empathy. More generally, any time and place where our occluded empathy would do our neighbor harm. We can't reach that balance of feelings that makes tolerance a virtue if we don't understand our neighbors and their lives. One crucial role of a free press in a democracy is to educate the public about each other. It's crucial because in polarized times like these, a free press can bridge the gaps in mutual understanding that most folks find painful to explore. Even as the internet empowered us to save a lot of trees in that process, it made way for new business models that undermine the capacity of news outlets, particularly local ones, to provide good quality, thoughtful accounts. Such accounts have always been subsidized, either by entertainment delivered with it, sports, cultural event coverage, fashion, puzzles, the Sunday comics, or by interested benefactors. But what were they interested in? And either way, there has been the risk that the news thus mediated to us omits important information, or worse, does harm through bias. If only the free market were mature, but it's only as mature as its most powerful participants. Being free is a promise, or as we say in our tradition, a covenant. The promise is equality under law, equal rights and dignity, diversity, equity and inclusion, fair play and opportunity, privacy and accountability, and liberation for all from fear, want, and oppression, however wealth and power are distributed among us. In perpetuity. This promise entails teaching our children about empowerment and virtue, about liberation and freedom. And I wonder how well we're doing that. Last Tuesday, Reuters reported a story about a 7th grader in Massachusetts who wore a T-shirt to school with the message, "There are only 2 genders." The school banned him from wearing it. He wore it again with a piece of tape over the words "only 2" that read, "censored." The school made him take it off. He and his parents sued, citing free speech. A U.S. District Court ruled for the school, as did the First Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, agreeing that it was reasonable to forecast that a message displayed throughout the school, it's a quote, message displayed throughout the school day denying the existence of the gender identities of transgender and gender nonconforming students would have a serious negative impact on those students' ability to concentrate on their classroom work. The news on Tuesday was that the U.S. Supreme Court has declined to hear his second appeal, with Justices Alito and Thomas dissenting, of course. Alito wrote, "Some lower courts are confused on how to manage the tension between students' rights and schools' obligations. Our nation's students, teachers, and administrators deserve clarity on this critically important question." Reuters framed this case as one of several Supreme Court actions related to transgender rights, including allowing a ban on transgender people in the U.S. military. By the end of this month, the court's expected to rule on a Tennessee law banning gender-affirming care. It's hard to see love, tolerance, or any other virtue on display in all of that. There are worse things happening in schools, of course. For the decade that I lived in New Orleans, the topic of the school-to-prison pipeline arose again and again. That's a label given to schools with conduct policies so strict that normal teenage behaviors become an offense. Students are suspended or expelled rather than nurtured. A couple of weeks ago, I listened to a podcast created by a high school student. She talked about school safety. Her remarks mirrored those of the Massachusetts school that banned the 2 genders T-shirt. Her family moved from an East Coast city, I've forgotten now which one, to New Orleans midway through her high school years. She described her school back east as a place where she felt safe and able to concentrate on being a good student. There were no armed guards. In New Orleans, she came to a school with armed guards who bullied and physically harassed students, which made it harder to learn and feel safe, as you can imagine. I don't know which school that was. I never encountered armed guards in schools there, but that was her experience. Hard to understand why anyone thought that was a good idea. Hardly tolerant or courageous. She said it felt like training for how to stay safe in prison. Such are our times, fearful, divided, disgusted, with little help to cope with these moods. 2 roads diverged in our public discourse. Half of us powered down one and half cerebrated up the other. A better road beckons. what would make a difference? To be free, you must embrace the breadth of your own existence without apology, even if they try to take it from you. You must know not that you can do whatever you want, but that to actually be free, you must know and fight for the liberated whole selves of everyone else. None of us is free unless all of us are free. Being free is a promise not to let fear or disgust overcome confidence in and empathy for one another. May we find our footing. Amen.
I invite Margot back up to extinguish our chalice. Please join us in saying our closing words, which you will find printed in your order of service. Go out
into the world in peace. Have courage. Hold on to what is good. Return to no person evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Honor all beings. And may we move together toward liberation and freedom.